everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, and autonomous driving, or I guess autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodie, and I am your host. And on today's episode, we're going to talk about electric vehicles. I had the very good fortune to interview Jason Marks and Forrest North, who are two of the three co-founders of TeloTrucks. Now, if you don't know what TeloTrucks is, stop what you're doing. Go to TeloTrucks.com and check out their really cool looking EV pickup truck. It is roughly the size of a two-door Mini Cooper. Actually, it's exactly the same length as a two-door Mini Cooper, which is 152 inches, and it seats 5 people. This is a really neat truck. Before we get to the interview this morning, Joseph sent me an email saying that TeloTrucks just closed a $5+ million round. And when I was talking to the fellas in the interview, they had closed a $6 million round recently as well. So big congratulations to the Telo team. All right, enough of the small talk. Let's welcome Forrest and Jason to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. There's a lot that you're doing that I find very interesting. Like, I like the products that are just kind of like weird one-offs that we don't typically see. And I think that's what you're doing at Telo. But before we get into that, I just wanted to introduce yourself and just kind of give us a little bit about your background. And we'll start with Forrest on this.
Sure. Hi, I'm Forrest North. I've been working on EVs for 20 years. I was early at Tesla and started an electric motorcycle company, sold an electric charging station finding app, and started Telo with Jason here.
Excellent. And how about you, Jason?
Yeah, so I'm Jason. I'm the CEO of TeloTrucks. I've been working on vehicle safety now for about 12 years. Started in the semiconductor space, working on radar and LiDAR chips. Ended up working on software and hardware systems that do things like driver assistance and lane keeping assistance for some of the electric pickup trucks that are on the road today.
Excellent. And either one of you can go on this one, because I'm sure you probably have a similar answer. But what inspired you to enter the electric truck market? Like, how did you go from, building an apps like PlugShare, which is what that was your app, right? For
Yeah. Yep. Correct.
So you built PlugShare. Jason, you worked with big OEMs on safety features. What inspired you to move on and form your own company and build electric trucks?
Yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of a genesis here. I drive a pickup truck, a Toyota Tacoma, in downtown San Francisco, largely because I have a 150-pound dog that I take to the beach fairly frequently. And he's not going in the back of a sedan, that's for sure, after he gets covered in water and sand. So having a truck is incredible. You can take all your friends mountain biking, go up to the hills and go snowboarding, take your dog to the beach, and you're everyone's best friend on moving day. But it's impossible to actually navigate the downtown cities. So I'd gone on a trip to Japan, 10, 15 years ago, and I saw the K-trucks they had in Japan, the small Japanese trucks they had that fit into a very small form factor for tax reasons. And I thought, that's ingenious. Why are we not doing something like that in the US? And when we dug into some of the reasons why we can't do that in the US, we thought, now's a really unique time in like the technological landscape and history to actually be able to address these main reasons that we can't have K-trucks in the US. And so it kind of spawned this endeavor we went down.
Was the idea to always build a mini truck? I mean, what was the original concept?
Yeah, that's exactly right. We came together. Jason wanted to build an electric motorcycle. I had built an electric motorcycle before, so a lot of people who are starting off building electric motorcycles come and find me. We decided to work together, and we built a really cool motorcycle behind us here, which your listeners can't see, but that was our first prototype. It was basically like kind of a cafe motorcycle to go like 100 miles and could do a little over 100 miles an hour, kind of like not a sport bike. And it kind of felt like I was hitting my head against the same wall when I'd started after I'd started an electric motorcycle before. But in general, we both, have come together because we want to electrify the world. And so we're always looking for like, what is the next way that we can do that? So as we were doing the motorcycle, we kind of realized that market's not very big. We're not going to displace a lot of carbon. And everyone we showed our presentation to, we had this kind of roadmap of doing a motorcycle and then a small car and then a mini truck. everyone was like, "Oh, I want the mini truck right now. Can you just make that?" And so we ended up pivoting.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about kind of Forrest and I meeting each other, we met in 2018. We were both separately kind of trying to solve the problem of city mobility. And the thesis that we both had was micromobility or small two-wheel transport would be the best way to solve that challenge and solve carbon emissions at the same time. But what we kind of stumbled upon almost through our own volition was like, there's this big opportunity to be had around fixing the biggest contributor to carbon emissions in the passenger vehicle space. And that was really around trucks. And that's when we pivoted and went down that route.
Do you want to talk a little bit about the mini truck that you actually are designing and creating right now? Because it's pretty unique. It's as just as long as, or maybe a little shorter than, a two-door Mini. Is that right?
Yeah. So, yeah. Same distance as a two-door Mini Cooper, 152 inches long. That's also our pre-order deposit amount. That's why it's exactly that number. But yeah, we built a crew cab pickup truck, and we wanted to really be an uncompromising crew cab pickup truck. So something that had the capability to carry as much as maybe a F-150 or a Toyota Tacoma, to fit 5 people, to have a 5-foot bed that can transform into an 8-foot bed. So uncompromising in every single way you would want to use a utility truck, but be extremely space efficient in a way that could actually navigate the city. And we kind of chose the Mini Cooper as a great benchmark for what really constitutes a small vehicle and a small footprint. And it was our engineering effort that let us package that vehicle together, the powertrain, the battery, the safety, the occupants, all that had to get packaged into that. And that was the real engineering challenge we had.
And so in order for you to get 8 feet, you gotta fold the back seats down, right? And then is there any expansion that you can do with the tailgate? Like you get a little flip up? Because from what I can see, you guys can hold full sheets of plywood in this.
Yes. And you could, without putting the mid-gate down, you could put the tailgate down. We haven't designed any special tailgate. Like there's a lot of tailgate accessories out there, little features that are new, but we haven't focused on that yet.
Okay. How far along are you in this process?
Well, we have one drivable prototype that, again, your listeners can't see, but you can see in your vision, as well as the exterior model of the vehicle. We just raised a nearly $6 million round. And that the intention of that round was to build 2 fully functional press-ready vehicles to be driving around the city streets to showcase exactly what our vehicle is capable of doing.
Who's your target audience? Who are your customers for this vehicle?
Yeah, it was so we launched in June of last year, really thinking that this would be people like us, people that were fairly young, between 20 and 50, that live in downtown cities, that go out and explore the world, but they have a really big space constraint. And they want to be able to go explore the world in many ways. So urban adventure, we called them. And we were blown away by the reception we got after our launch. We're nearly at 3,000 paid pre-orders. And it's kind of that classification of people that you might expect. It's Los Angeles, New York, San Jose, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Dallas, surprisingly, Seattle are kind of our main pre-order kind of recipients that fall into that category. What was really surprising to us, though, was that we got a huge influx of interest from corporations that were using pickup trucks on a day-to-day basis that operate in downtown cities, and found that pickup trucks have just gotten too big to do the job they need to do. And that was a kind of an aha moment for us, being like, wow, if we look at the landscape of pickup trucks that are purchased in the US every year, about 2/3 of them are purchased for commercial reasons in downtown cities. We look at the landscape of downtown city purchases, about 2/3 are for commercial applications. And we thought, wow, there's a huge opportunity to kind of solve this problem. And these are people that really feel the pain of the gigantification of the pickup truck.
Which was almost a little bit of a surprise to our thesis when we were starting out. So we kind of did, this market analysis of what exists. And, I think one of the things that everyone is noticing and starting to notice more and more is that trucks have just gotten absolutely gigantic. And when you dig into why that is, it's really this unintended consequence of the EPA's 2010 rules, which finally put mileage requirement, miles per gallon requirements on trucks and SUVs. But they did that based on the footprint of the vehicle, and all of the footprints of vehicles, basically the length, because you can't really do much with the width. Every year that ratchets up, and it ratchets up less and less the bigger your vehicle gets, and to a point where it doesn't actually change. And that's where all the vehicles now are being made is at this giant size. And so we were kind of thinking, well, big trucks are good for fleets and, construction and things like that, but it's the people that want to use them every day in an urban area that would want them. But fleets use them in urban areas too, and they're the ones really feeling a lot of this pain of the trucks getting so big.
Yeah, I mean, I live in the city of Tempe, and I will give all the credit in the world to Tempe because our taxes are high, but they provide great services. But they have a pretty decent sized fleet of electric vehicles, mostly like Leafs and Bolts. But I could definitely see the Telo truck being something that they could use for a variety of different reasons. Like the water department will just come out and help you set up your irrigation so you're not wasting water and stuff like that. But this guy has all sorts of things in the back of his Leaf that he needs for his job, and it's maybe not the most practical, but a small pickup would be very practical for him.
Absolutely. We see that around here as, a lot as well, water departments. And a lot of times people are idling in their trucks forever. There's someone got a job, they have a truck because occasionally they need to bring some large thing that you don't want to necessarily have in your vehicle. But for the most of the time, they're doing logistics of being somewhere, making sure something happens, sitting in their car, staying cool or warm. And EVs are just great for that, right? Like, so let's take a lot of trucks and let's keep them from idling all the time. And when trucks need to be big and need to haul stuff, great. Like they should be diesel or hydrogen or biodiesel or something, but let's electrify the ones that don't need to be hauling stuff across the country.
Absolutely. Can you talk a little bit about the unique design?
Yeah. So, Forrest is probably good to handle some of this because
our third founder is Yves Bahar. So he's because we were going for the urban users and the city users. They're really, we really felt like a modern design was going to be something that could help us a lot. A modern, simple design. And Yves is really well known for that. And he worked with me on the motorcycle at Mission Motors 15 years ago.
Yeah, so we Forrest had worked with Yves for, he's known him for 15 years, all the way back in Mission Motor days. And Forrest and I were chatting. We were like, we know we want to do this mini truck concept. And we had an idea of kind of how we would package the people and the powertrain and the tires and kind of like the engineering pieces of it. But Forrest kind of looked at it and goes, this thing isn't going to sell to the masses. Like we need to have something that'll stand out, that'll really kind of make an impact in the world and from a visual perspective. And he was like, nobody else makes sense but to bring on Yves, who I've known forever. And when you told Yves about it, he got so excited about doing this project. He's like, this is the coolest project ever. I'm so excited about this. And he came on as an investor first, then as a partner, then as a co-founder. So he kind of just ratcheted his involvement up and up and up because he got more and more excited about the project.
Yeah, I'll put a picture of the truck as the actual show art. But for anybody who hasn't looked at this vehicle, they should go look. You have a very cool feature. At least I thought it was really cool. You have an exposed front wheel, and then you have the pill shape on the door. Can you explain why you have that? This is like when I first saw your truck, I was like, oh, that's a cool design concept. But then there's an actual function and utility behind that.
Yeah. So one of the challenges we had is how do you package people as effectively into the vehicle as possible? And the way to do that is to kind of move the tires as far away from the people as you can. So we moved the front tires almost all the way to the front, and the back tires a good amount towards the rear. What that did is it prevented us from actually having a fully enclosed front tire, because the tire has to turn and move up and down. And so in order to actually keep the vehicle short, if you throw a bumper over it or a cover over it, it actually has to be significantly longer than the actual movement of the tire to avoid any rubbing. So we said, okay, we're going to try to have exposed front tires as much as possible that the regulations allow. And in doing so, what happens is air is automatically hit by the tire and the exposed areas around the tire as you move through the vehicle. Aerodynamics is a huge component of an electric vehicle because the better aerodynamic components you have, so the less aerodynamic drag you have, the more efficient your vehicle is. The longer it can go, the better range it has. So what we wanted to do is, even though we had exposed tires, to have the best range we could. So when you have exposed tires, you get this big pocket of air that goes to really high pressure behind that tire, because that's where the wheel well sits. And we needed a way to release that pressure back into the world and kind of reattach it to the flow of air around it. So what we have is a channel that kind of directs air back into the flow of air next to the side. And in doing so, it's an engineering component similar to how an F1 car has a barge board, but we added a design element to it as well to kind of call it out so you can see that visually.
Yeah, that just shows, I mean, not to say that you guys aren't thinking, but that's like really creative. Forrest, are there any other hidden design features that also have a utility?
Interesting. We're very excited about the midgate. Midgates have been done before, but I think it's really practical for this type of vehicle, where it's not a truck where you're necessarily going to the landscape store and getting a ton of gravel. It's more set up, for going on a mountain biking trip or camping or hauling stuff around the city. And so, especially in the city, you want to have tonneau cover and you want to protect stuff in the bed. So it allows you to put really long objects in. So a lot of people do that with hatchbacks already, right? They'll put surfboards in their hatchback and move seats around. And so it just gives you a lot of capability. So I like that one. I would say another design feature really is just what Jason was mentioning about moving the wheels. Part of that's for spacing for the passenger compartment, but also it's for the battery pack. So we really, I personally feel like you've got to have over 300 miles of range to have a decent electric vehicle. We get some pushback from people who are like, oh, I'm in the city. Like, why not smaller battery packs that could be cheaper? And maybe in the future we'll have some different sizes, but we wanted to really anchor at the most range that we could get in this vehicle because we want to take people from the city and let them get out into the country, get up into the mountains.
Let's talk about the battery technology a little bit, because I know this is kind of your specialty. As much as you can talk about, I understand there's probably some things you don't want to talk about, but what's different about the TeloTruck than, say, what Tesla's doing or Lucid or, Hyundai?
Yeah, well, I'd say, a battery pack is a really equivalent to, when you're thinking about the past of the automobile world, it's really equivalent to the engine of the vehicle. And people often think that it's more equivalent to the gas tank. But really, the battery defines all the characteristics that the motor will just end up delivering. So how much torque, how much power, which is essentially current, how much top speed, which is voltage, how fast it will charge, all of the things that really kind of start to matter to the user. So battery pack needs to be designed for the vehicle and for the purpose that it's intended in. So for us, the real strong intention is this form factor, getting as much capacity into a small space as possible, and doing that where we can still cool it and have the safety and all of the important things of a battery pack. So other vehicles will have different requirements. A lot of them are taller. Ours is very efficient in the Z height, because any height of the battery directly translates to the height of the roof, and the height of the roof directly translates to your coefficient of drag. So we've really optimized this pack for our vehicle, and we've also used some of the most modern technology in making a manufacturable pack at small volumes. So we feel great about us building this pack in a cost-efficient, manufacturable way. We're using off-the-shelf cells, so as chemistry improves, the capacity of cells improves, and we get those improvements right off the bat.
Excellent. Are you using 2170 cells?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. One thing that's really important, what Forrest just said, I want to highlight is when you design your vehicle, you set up a set of requirements for that vehicle. If our set of requirements were we need to hit 0 to 60 in sub 2 seconds and be the fastest vehicle out there, that would require a set of design parameters that are significantly different than the design parameters we have. Because we're still a 0 to 60 in 4 seconds, which is massively impressive for a mini truck, but it gives us the opportunity to really focus on the things that matter for the utility of our vehicle, and that's packaging efficiency and manufacturing efficiency.
Yeah, and we felt like that wow factor, like that worked for the early companies, but now people are kind of like, okay, I mean, you might do that a few times to impress somebody, but is that really what you should make massive compromises around a vehicle for?
Oh yeah, the things that make EVs fun, even the most basic EV has that. It's not as if you're going to go buy, a Hyundai Kona. The Hyundai Kona EV is a great vehicle, but you're not going to go buy a Hyundai Kona EV and be disappointed in the pickup if you When I say pickup, I mean acceleration.
Yeah.
If you came from a gas vehicle, if you came from a performance Model S, probably you might be a little disappointed, but most people aren't going to be disappointed in that.
Yeah.
All right. What about, what are your expectations? You said the range was going to be 350 miles. How were you designing for durability of that battery pack? Are you using LFP cells, or like how are we going to keep our battery pack happy and healthy for as long as possible?
Great question.
Yeah, I mean, our focus is on keeping the pack. The term is isothermal, so like really keeping every cell's thermal experience to be the same as all the other cells. So basically, you can think about a cell as a chemistry experiment. And if you ever, were doing any chemistry in high school or whatever, basically, if you add heat to any kind of chemistry experiment, it usually goes faster. So temperature has a big, effect on chemistry. So these little batteries, as assuming the little chemistry experiments, if they're going through life and experiencing different thermal gradients, they degrade at different rates, and that is a real problem in batteries. That's why cooling is so important. So the durability of a battery is essentially about good cooling strategy and protecting those batteries from any intrusion. So those are the two things that we've really focused on. Keeping the Z height really low, keeping the cooling to be as isothermal as possible, and moving the cells as far in from the edges as we can.
Okay.
To protect them against intrusion.
This next question was not one that I wrote down, but what do you wish people knew more about when it came to like battery cell technology? Because you hear all sorts of things in the media, and then that gets parroted in, at cocktail parties or barbecues or whatever. What's like one thing you wish you could just dispel that myth altogether when it comes to batteries?
Well, that's an excellent question. Let me think on that. Do you have
I do. And it's really though around, I think there's a lot of misnomers around charging and what people consider when they think about charging. I read an article recently, actually it was just last week, that was like, we hit this amazing charge rate for this battery pack, but the battery pack was over 200 kilowatt hours. And so if you look at the charge rate that they hit and the size of the pack, it would actually take longer to charge than the existing packs that exist today at a lower charge rate. And so there's a misnomer around what it actually means to charge quickly, and what that means for the battery pack, and what that means for over time. Because a lot of times people hit a very fast charge rate very instantaneously. But if you look at it over time, that charge rate's actually, the average of that charge rate might be a little lower than you'd expect, which is why charging takes so long. But there's so many things associated with how, like over time, if you look at voltage versus time in a charging, it's not a linear fashion. It's a very unique kind of graph that's maybe people don't understand that the charging isn't one-to-one with voltage, and it isn't one-to-one, and you have to compare it in a different way when you look at the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, I would pair it a little bit with what Jason's saying on the charging side. So, I started at Tesla in 2005, working on solar cars before that since 94. Oh my God, for 20 years trying to tell people like the charging is not like filling up a tank of gas. And I'm looking online and like people need to be shouting it from the rooftops. They need to be telling everybody like, you're not going to drive a vehicle like from 100% state of charge to 0% of state of charge and then expect to fill it up in 3 minutes, because that's just not how you would use it. Like, it's not how you use your phone, right? You don't just like drain it to zero and then be like, oh my God, I need to charge it, right? Like you charge it based on your life's, like your schedule, so you go to work and maybe you plug in your computer while you're at work. When you get home, you plug in your phone before you go to sleep. And that's exactly how charging should be happening with the vehicle. It gets harder if you have an apartment or you're in a condo in a city. And so there's a lot of charging infrastructure that still needs to be built, but it's definitely charging is much more about opportunity and charging in appropriate times than the gas station model. Now, that being said, the gas station model needs to be there so that you can go to other cities. But that happens so rarely. I mean, I've been driving an electric car since 2011. I still have a Nissan Leaf from 2011. And I mean, I've fast charged maybe like less than a dozen times. Because every morning it's full, and it just, charging basically regresses to the mean, and that everybody drives essentially 8 kilowatt hours a day worth of charging. And that's kind of what ends up happening.
Yeah, I could see that. And a lot of that, I think what you're talking about in terms of where people might get frustrated, like in Chicago last year, where it was really cold, that nobody was preconditioning their batteries. Some of those vehicles weren't even able to precondition batteries, and then it just took forever to charge. A lot of people had to be towed away. I think automakers, all of them, do a pretty poor job in terms of educating their customers on these edge cases, because it's fine when you're plugging in every night and you get up and it's cold outside. No big deal. Your car was plugged in. It's probably heating the battery while it's plugged in. But when you are an Uber driver and you need to go to work and there's 50 other people in front of you and tow trucks are coming in and out because cars are bricked, it becomes problematic, and it's bad PR for the automotive companies.
Yeah, absolutely. Charging is a huge issue. I think it is the thing holding back the EV industry at this time. And I felt like there were so many companies tackling it that we would be farther along by now. But it needs more work.
I do have a question about that, but I'll wait till the end.
Yeah.
Based on recent news.
Yeah.
Jason, you are in charge of safety. I mean, you're the CEO, but your specialty is safety. Can you talk a little bit about what Telo's truck has in terms of safety features?
Yeah. So I think that kind of setting the tone of this conversation, like we're currently at an all-time high on pedestrian deaths on U.S. roadways. They estimate 10,000 pedestrians will be killed on U.S. roadways this year. And 40,000 will be killed in vehicle accidents altogether in the U.S. And if you look at the statistics, the majority of those pedestrian deaths are caused by light-duty trucks, which includes SUVs and trucks and vans. And many of them are happening in downtown areas. So we see that the size of the pickup truck getting so massive and egregiously large, and throwing 3,000 pounds of batteries on it to make it electric is only going to exacerbate that issue and cause a lot of issues. We're at a pretty decent state with occupant protection in crash safety these days. A lot of science has gone into it, but a lot of the science that goes into it doesn't actually make its way into the vehicles. So one of the things I learned working in kind of the space of vehicle safety was that all this investment had been made into different types of safety, both active safety, which we call ADAS, autonomy, and passive safety, which we call crash safety. That is just could be used to make a vehicle significantly safer than it was today, to save occupants and to save pedestrians. So we do things like we employ the same type of technology that was used in autonomous driving, but instead of using it for autonomous driving, we do it to survey our surroundings to predict collisions. And if we can predict collisions with near certainty, we can do things that very quickly anticipate a collision right before it happens. And we can save occupants and we can save pedestrians as well when you do that. So we use a lot of predictive technology to actually determine a collision, what kind of collision it may be, the likelihood of that collision, and to deploy safety in various areas in the vehicle to actually save the vehicle. On top of that, we still have crumple zones, right? Just like a vehicle would have crumple zones. We pass FMVSS 208, which is the frontal crash safety. We will pass it. We're working on all the simulations right now. And it's really interesting to note that the history of frontal crash safety has kind of existed with these long hoods, these 4-foot long, 5-foot long hoods of vehicles, because it has to push a V8 engine out of the way somehow in that crash. That's a big giant brick of iron that's immobile. Incompressible. So when you don't have that giant engine in front of you and you have a small motor that's kind of tucked underneath the footwell of a vehicle, you can do things that just focus on minimizing the change in acceleration of that frontal area by employing strategies that have been kind of researched in the past few years, but using different types of materials, doing a different type of crumple that pushes the crumple out of the way and makes it so you don't need 30 inches, 48 inches of hood to get the same results for change in acceleration for the occupants.
Yeah, in terms of crumple zones, right? My audience is pretty familiar about this because I talk about this kind of thing all the time. But one of the things, it's great to have a crumple zone. It's great to have this big, long hood. But if you get hit hard enough, that motor is going to get pushed back into the cab. So that is I mean, there's no way for the motor to crumple. Like you can have crumple zones all around the motor. The whole point is for the crumple zone to design. It's designed to take the energy away from the cab of that vehicle as much as possible. But when you have that motor that gets smashed into the passenger compartment, that kind of becomes problematic. One of the things I was curious about, though, in terms of pedestrian safety, the front of your vehicle is pretty shallow. Now, from what I understand, and I'm not an expert in this, but from what I understand, a lot of, especially like smaller cars, are designed to kind of like, if they hit somebody, it's kind of designed to like flip them up onto the hood to protect them instead of like pushing them out into traffic so they can get injured more. Do you have that kind of like what happens if somebody gets hit? Is best as you can tell. Like we don't ever want to discuss this, right? But we want to know that car companies are thinking about it. We don't want to put that into the world that somebody's going to get hit.
Yeah, without giving you too much in this space, because this is kind of a little bit of our secret sauce, is that we look at what happens right before a pedestrian would hit the vehicle, and we do things that actually make it so that impact is significantly softer than the impact would otherwise be. And there's a couple of ways we do that. One is that we use those same predictive sensors and we deploy safety in a certain way. The other way we do it is that we have a significantly lower hood than any other truck does. Our line of vision, by the way, is very, very good from the downward angle because our hood isn't very tall. So one of the problems that the pickup trucks of today have is, I don't know if you've walked up to any of the pickup trucks built today, but I almost can't see over them. And they're huge. So if you get hit square on, flat on. You have nothing. It's just you and your body. A sedan is built in such a way that if you hit on the legs, you fall over the front. Then you run into the issue of your head hitting the glass because you actually travel so far from a vertical position to an overhanging position. So we actually have looked at kind of what is the ideal way that is you cushion a pedestrian impact. And it's a combination of not hitting them too high and not having this huge amount of distance you fall and not falling onto something super hard. So it's a combination of all three of those.
Yeah, it's really about the acceleration of the brain and the heart. So everything that we do is not necessarily about the acceleration of the B pillar or anything. It's just about, where are all the squishy gray matters in the situation and how can we accelerate them in the smoothest, decelerate them in the smoothest way possible. But the best, pedestrian accident is the one that doesn't happen. And if your vehicle is a lot smaller and you can see the ground in front of it, we think that's one of the best things.
Let's move on to something more positive.
Yeah.
Let's talk about dead puppies. No, I'm just kidding.
No.
Let's talk about the software. Do you have? Are you prototyping software now? I would imagine, because I think you said at some point in something I read, 2025 is when you're expected to start shipping. How's the software coming along? How's that a user interface experience going to be for the customer?
Yeah, I think one of the really cool things we do is we have a Discord forum in which a lot of our pre-order people are a part of, and they give us a lot of direct product feedback of what they want to see from an HMI perspective, from a UX perspective, how they want to interact with the vehicle. One of the biggest points of feedback we get on that Discord channel is that they want a simplification of the user experience. One of the things we're doing is because we're such a unique vehicle for a specific utility case, people tend to say, look, I don't need some crazy luxury interior with screens everywhere that I have to go figure out all the interfaces to. I want to have haptics. I want to be able to touch things and feel them and move them around. So we're currently in the design phase of those type of haptics so that they kind of abide by the electric vehicle world, but they're easy to use. They're simple. They do exactly what you expect them to do. You don't have to stare at a screen for 10 seconds to change columns to actually do something. While you're driving, you can put your hand on something, you can turn it, and it changes the thing. So we're pushing towards a simplification and really focus on the utility of the actual use of the vehicle. So with that said, we are prototyping a lot of those elements of them and designing a lot of those elements, but it's a little simpler than maybe you would expect. We don't want to have a scenario where our screen goes black and your vehicle's bricked for a time period. We want to really make a lot more analog components that actually don't have that same risk.
How about Apple CarPlay and Android Auto? Is that?
We fully intend to do that, but we haven't spoken to.
Okay.
We haven't penned a contract with either of them.
Okay, excellent. I want to talk a little bit about the Discord because you're not exactly building in public, but you are getting direct feedback from your customer base. So do you want to talk about why you set up a Discord and how valuable that's been?
Yeah, I mean, it's been extremely valuable. So we set up a Discord. Actually, one of a friends of mine had his building flooded. And when his building flooded, he established a Discord community where everyone was sharing information and trying to help each other out. And he came to me, he's like, dude, you got to check out this community I built based on this situation I had. And we now are all like, we get so much feedback. We're all friends. We all had this really great experience. And I think that you could have a similar situation at your company. You could get product feedback. You could have people sharing how they use it. You can kind of track how they want to intend to use the vehicle, and you can directly feed that into your engineering cycle. So we actually built a CRM, a customer relationship manager around management tool around our Discord. So as people provide feedback, it directly channels it into our product portfolio, and it goes right into our engineering kind of like front and center. So we wanted to make sure that we had an active Discord community so that we could get as much feedback as possible, so we could prove that we were doing the right things. I feel that a lot of people, when they build, especially a consumer product, they go heads down for years, especially if it's hardware, and they come out of it and the world's changed and they've built a product that no longer pertains to that world. So we really didn't want to run into that situation. We wanted to make sure that we were building a product that pertained to the world as it grew, and we were making the right design decisions at the right time. And so the Discord's been an awesome way to do that.
And we learned so much about our customers. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
That's a great loop, right? Is it just your pre-order customers get access to this? Can anybody get access to it?
Anybody can get access to it. And we have people like, we know, like, we've had investors that have looked at our company that have, joined under a fake name. We know, we kind of figured that out. They're trying to pry a little bit into things like that, but like, everyone's welcome to join 100%. We want people to be active in this. We want it to be an open forum. We don't moderate it in terms of like, if you have feedback for us that's negative, we're not going to remove that feedback. We take it as a learning opportunity.
And how would people get on the Discord if they wanted to do that? Is there a link on the website?
Yeah, there's a link on the website. At the bottom of the website, you just click on the Discord link and it'll take you right to it. You are required to introduce yourself.
Okay.
That's the only requirement we have.
And if you're a VC, you're required to introduce yourself, right?
With a fake intro, maybe. No, you don't have to say who you are. Just the question is, how would you use the truck? We want to know.
Okay.
Like, we don't want people to necessarily just lurk. We want to have at least a little bit of feedback from everybody that.
Yeah, of course. The whole point is to bring value to the actual product. Okay. These next two questions, I only have two more left. This is not meant to be in a negative way at all, but the reality is you're a startup, and there are going to be challenges that you're facing now and you'll face in the future when you decide you're going to start production and all that stuff. So you got companies like Canoe, Fisker, Lordstown, and I'm not saying like this is not a judgment on, because some of those companies had some sketchy leaders. This is not a judgment on any of that stuff, but how do you look at those companies to see kind of where they failed, and how are you handling when you come up against something that's similar?
So we've seen this graveyard of electric vehicles over the last 20 years. We totally agree that it exists. And especially right now with the headwinds we're seeing in the electric vehicle industry, it's a bloodbath out there. It's crazy. But we absolutely have learned a hell of a lot from a lot of the people. But also it's a little bit different time now than it was 5 years ago as well. So this combination of these two things really puts us in a unique position. Fundamentally, we want to be the most capital efficient automaker that's ever been around. And we feel that it's possible to do that because of both the learnings and the current situation of the world. So I'll give you a couple of kind of areas that we've really focused on. One is building a financial model that doesn't require high volume manufacturing, that we build from our own factories to get to profitability. So, one of our investors and advisors is Andy Palmer, the ex-CEO of Aston Martin and the ex-CEO of Nissan. And he really helped us build a financial model that allows us to get to profitability at that low and mid volume, and all the things necessary to actually do that, because he did it at Aston Martin. He's done it before at other vehicle programs. And that's possible because manufacturing doesn't require us to build our own factories anymore. We can contract manufacture at a mid and low volume, and we can do that profitably now. Commercial off-the-shelf components is a huge component of what we do. We only innovate where innovation is necessary to build our vehicle. That's in the battery and the safety and the design. Those are the only areas we innovate on. The rest of it is actually all almost entirely purchased as commercial off-the-shelf components. And if you look at how that's changed over time, it's been absolutely incredible. If you look at an inverter from 20 years ago that went into some of the first EVs, it was the size of the back of the entire trunk of a vehicle. And now that same 250 horsepower inverter fits into the palm of my hands. It's just wild what's been possible. And the last piece really is software and AI and things that have enabled us to actually design and develop at just this crazy order of magnitude faster and efficiently than before. So we've already crashed our vehicle 100 times. In the past, you had to build 100 prototypes, run them against a sled, slam them into a wall, and that's tens of millions of dollars to do that project. We hit a few buttons in software, it goes and executes a couple of crash tests on the cloud overnight, and we get a bunch of results back, and we can make modifications and learn from that in a very short duration of time. And those three things together is kind of how we're building our company
in a really cost-effective way. So I think Jason's really just addressed like these other companies may have spent a lot of money sometimes trying to engineer things and differentiate on ways that we don't think were maybe necessary. I would like to kind of step back and just be like, well, the whole market analysis. Why did those other vehicle companies that you've named, why were they going after big trucks by making an electrified big truck? Because what were they going to differentiate on? So we've already kind of talked about how the market, has grown to be big because of this unintended consequence. Well, when the market does that, it leaves a hole where the hole is the size of a vehicle that was super popular for 20 years. Like the Ford Ranger, the Toyota SR5, like all these small trucks that people will come to us and we're like, I loved that truck. It was amazing. I could maneuver it. And so, none of those vehicles that you were mentioning were really differentiating on anything. And what's hard is if you're a giant truck, the thing you can do better than anything else is you can haul, you can tow 10,000 pounds and you can tow it all day long. And EVs are just not going to be able to do that until there's a charging network that could support that. And so you're just entering a market where you're already kind of like a step down, and they all experienced problems. So regardless of whether their leadership made the right decisions or whatever, in the end, they were going for a market that I think was a tough one to go after.
I think in general, it's hard to build a vehicle that takes an existing vehicle platform and make it electric. I think that for the electric enthusiasts, they'll be super excited about that. But for the other 60 to 80% of the market, it's very hard to be like, what trade-off am I actually giving up? Like electric vehicle is more expensive. I have to learn a new mechanism of charging. Maybe I just stick with my gas vehicle. What's really unique about our vehicle is that we didn't just throw batteries and an electric motor on an existing vehicle. Our vehicle is only possible because of the electrification process. Like you can't build our electric mini truck with the capabilities of an F-150 and the size of a Mini Cooper with a V8 gas engine. It wouldn't fit. It wouldn't pass crash safety. It wouldn't have enough room for passengers. So it's really unique for us that we're able to actually build this vehicle only because it's electric, and we're offering it as a new market segment for someone that would want this type of vehicle.
You would have to get 55 to 60 miles per gallon.
Yeah. Yeah, because of the EPA, Forrest is right. In order to actually build this vehicle, you would have to meet the EPA requirements, which for this year are 55 miles per gallon, and in 4 years from now are 65 miles per gallon, which is very
you're not going to meet that without having a battery pack anyway. So it's like now you're going to put two systems on a vehicle this size. So we're really doing something that electrification has enabled. It's awesome.
Yeah.
I had, in 1994, I bought a Mitsubishi 2-door pickup truck. My buddy had a Volkswagen pickup truck, both very small vehicles. And I loved both of those trucks. They were a lot of fun to drive. And, if I could go back and pick up another one, I absolutely would, because it was the perfect size for me, especially at the time because I was single. But your vehicle seats 5 people, 5 adults.
That's right.
Pretty comfortably.
Yep.
Do you want to talk about, before we get to our last question, do you want to talk about the specs and the price of the truck?
Yeah. So, we wanted, again, everything we wanted to do is an uncompromising utility vehicle. So we did is we kind of thought, we surveyed the market, said, what do you really need of an uncompromising utility vehicle? Well, 6,000 pounds towing, we heard. Great. Our vehicle can tow 6,000 pounds. 1,600 pounds of payload. Great. Our vehicle can carry 1,600 pounds, no problem. 4-wheel drive. Check. 350 miles of range. Seats 5 people. These are all things that you would expect from a utility pickup truck that we all include in our vehicle. And we can do that because it's such a small and efficient packaging of the vehicle at a price point that's fairly impressive in my mind, but $50,000 before incentives. That's what we're talking about here. So a vehicle that really comes in at an approachable price point. If you look at the average cost of a pickup truck in the US, it's $61,000. And there's no electric incentives on the average pickup truck in the US.
And the luxury market is even higher. It's 75 above.
Sure. And then the EV market is right in that same 75, 80. Like, it's really hard to get a truck that is an EV truck that is affordable by mere mortals, Like, I never thought in my life when I was 18 and I bought my truck for $9,000, I didn't think I'd ever spend $58,000 on a car. And after everything's all said and done, like, this is just ridiculously expensive. So what you guys are doing is great. You're keeping it affordable so that people can actually buy them and use them. Okay, so this is the last question. You can decline to answer this last question, but it has to do with charging infrastructure. I believe I read somewhere or saw somewhere that you're going to use NACS on the truck for charging.
Yes.
Do you have any concerns about Elon laying off the entire supercharger team?
Yes.
Yeah, we're keeping an eye on how things play out. I think that we don't understand all the pieces of the pie right now, so we can't really comment on it too much. What we do know, though, is that the NACS plug, the North American Charging Standard plug, it's not the Tesla plug, it's the North American Charging Standard plug, is an extremely space efficient packaged plug. It kind of abides by our whole thesis of our company around space efficiency, and it's capable of charging our vehicle extremely quickly. So we quite like that technology.
So our plan is to be native, so the outlet on our vehicle will be that NACS, no adapter or anything.
Sure. And I like, anytime Elon does something that seems crazy, it always seems to work out in some way, whether he reverses, somebody cleans up the mess. I don't know how it works, but it does seem to work out on some level. As far as, and you may or may not know this, as far as the Society of Automotive Engineers, the J3400 standard, does that not just mean that anybody can use that now? Maybe they have to pay a licensing fee to Tesla to build those things, but isn't that what we wanted? Was that to be opened up as a national standard or an international standard?
Well, the greatest thing about standards is there's so many to pick from. So on the charging side, I think it's less about the standard that people adopt, and it's more about the quality of the charging stations that exist, and is there a business model that supports them being put in the ground. And I think that's the thing that everyone's still struggling with. And so the reason I'm a little surprised at the recent move is that the most successful network out there has been Tesla's, and they put it in originally, and they put that price as part of the vehicle. And that's what, to me, makes the most sense for the charging network, because there isn't a great business model that I can see for putting in fast charging. If you're a private third party, the gas station model isn't the same, because 100% of gasoline vehicles have to fill up at a gas station. But when you look at electric vehicles, it's like less than 10% will even ever, use it on a per kilowatt scale. So just the amount of energy being delivered is like 10% is coming through fast chargers. And then as far as numbers of people using them, it is very small, but you need them there to sell the vehicle, because people need to use them in that few instances that they need to use them. So it's just a tricky model, and the large OEMs so far have not wanted to weigh in and support by putting in stations. With a few exceptions, but by and large, that they've wanted it to be a third party, like an EVgo or a Shell or somebody, to come in and put in stations. So that's the chasm, I think, right now, is like, how do we get 10 times or maybe 100 times more fast charging stations out there? Who's going to pay that? And who's going to get value from that? Because the value is to society and to EV drivers.
So any OEM can go and install the NACS receptacle port, get it to work with their battery pack, hook up the right contactors to it. It's that interface that you have with a particular charging station that is the software challenge effectively associated with that. And, right now, the truth of the matter is the Tesla superchargers are extremely reliable in the grand scheme of things. And they have a great amount of uptime in compared to other charging stations out there. So people really want to interface with them because of that uptime and reliability. And that directly translates to what seems like the usefulness of your vehicle. So I think that it's less of a challenge on the OEM side of things, because it's not really that hard to just build the hardware to do it, build all the pieces necessary to do it. It's that interface that has to happen, that has to get figured out.
Sure. And I'll say this part, so you guys, you don't have to say anything after this. But the I would imagine the scary part is, again, you don't have to comment, is that what happens if Elon cuts that off, right? That's a scary part, especially for companies like Ford, Rivian, GM. That's scary altogether. But we won't discuss that too much. But I do agree that it is something that sells vehicles. Like I know a guy in Maryland right now who's waiting for Rivian to switch over to the NACS port so that he can buy one because he wants to use the supercharger network. It's not only selling Teslas, it's selling other vehicles as well. So, all right. And I can take that part out if you want. I won't add it.
No.
I don't want to make things uncomfortable. All right. Well, thank you very much for one, being so kind, and two, being so candid with your answers. Where can people find you if they're interested in what you're doing?
Yeah. First off, please come join our Discord, talk about our vehicle, talk about how you use our vehicle, give us feedback on the product. We're currently still in the design phase of a lot of pieces of the pie, and we would love to get your feedback. So the Discord, which you can find on our website at TeloTrucks.com, TELO trucks.com. We'll be more active on social platforms as well. We do have an Instagram, although it's relatively inactive currently, but we're bringing people on to help us make that more active. But I will say that you will get definitely weekly, but almost daily contact with our team if you join the Discord channel.
That's excellent. Do you have any personal social media that you would like people to follow?
Yeah, not that I would share.
Okay.
No.
That's fair.
You don't need to see me flail around doing fitness activities.
All right. Well, now that's a challenge for the folks out there to find it. All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. And again, I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Bodie.
So
and thanks for being a champion of EVs.
Yes.
Thanks. All right, everybody, that is it for our show today. I want to thank Forrest and Jason for coming on the show and being such great guests. I'd also like to thank Sydney for setting the interview up. Sydney, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And yeah, if you're curious about what Telo's doing, again, go to their website, sign up to their Discord, introduce yourself, say hello. And that website is TeloTrucks.com. All right, everybody, that is it for me this episode. I hope you all had a wonderful week. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will talk to you soon.